On October 1st, 1971, to coincide with the grand opening of the Magic Kingdom, Tomorrowland's main e-ticket attraction, Flight to the Moon, opened. This attraction was formerly located in what is now a partially abandoned building across from Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. Although it's abandoned today, this building has a very deep history. As I mentioned earlier, the first of the 4 attractions to be in this building throughout its history was Flight to the Moon. Disney World's Flight to the Moon was a sort of upgrade from Disneyland's Rocket to the Moon, with a deeper story and audio animatronics figures. Upon entering the attraction, guests would find themselves in a waiting room with this large sign, as you can see here, counting down till the next show. Another cool detail is that it actually said which flight number the guests were going to be participating in. Once the doors had opened, admitting guests into the real queue, then that's when the experience began, as they would find themselves in a small pre-show room. The pre-show featured a mission control set, in which there were many audio animatronics on various monitors getting ready to send you on your mission. After a brief introduction by a cast member, you'd be introduced to flight director Tom Morrow. Yes, that's right, Tomorrow, that's his name. After the pre-flight briefing pre-show, guests would be sent down the hall into one of 2 theaters, designed to look like a massive rocket ship rotunda. As the show began, the large screens on the walls then began showing data for the rocket ship. A few minutes later, a large screen on the floor, which was circular and in the middle of the room, and also one directly above it on the ceiling, would suddenly spark to life. Both of these were supposed to be windows and would display your flight as such the entire time. As far as I know, the seats would also vibrate, simulating motion, which means that this was the first simulator at Walt Disney World. Finally, the attraction would end with a successful flight to the moon, and guests would exit back out into Tomorrowland. Unlike Disneyland's Rocket to the Moon, Flight to the Moon opened in the 1970s, when it wasn't quite as relevant to most guests. So when Space Mountain came along only 4 years later, Flight to the Moon transformed into Mission to Mars. The reimagining of the attraction was fairly subtle, and yet very effective. In the pre-show, Mr. Johnson replaced Tom Morrow, although in reality it was the same audio animatronics figure, reskinned and redressed to look like a different person. Like Tom Morrow before him, Mr. Johnson delivered his spiel about the mission you'd be going on before sending you down the hall into one of the theaters. Finally, like Flight to the Moon before it, a successful mission to Mars would have been completed, and guests would have returned to Tomorrowland just as they had before. As usual, Disney has left plenty of references and even remnants from both of these former attractions for guests to discover, if you know where to look. For example, one extremely obvious reference to both of these attractions can be found aboard Magic Kingdom's Peoplemover.
Paging Mr. Morrow, Mr. Tom Morrow, please contact Mr. Johnson in the control tower to confirm your flight to the moon. Thank you.
But Tomorrowland isn't the only place where you can find leftover relics from these beloved attractions. Head on over to Epcot, specifically to Mission Space, which is a sort of modern-day version of Mission to Mars. While there is an Earth mission, the Orange mission on Mission Space is literally a modern and more intense version of Mission to Mars. Really coming full circle, you do actually go on a flight to the moon to slingshot around it on the same mission. Finally, on Mission Space, you have to enter hypersleep to make it to Mars, just like how you had to enter hyperspace to make it to Mars in Mission to Mars. Here's one last thing that'll blow your mind. The old mission control monitors that were in the pre-show for both Flight to the Moon and Mission to Mars can now be found in the queue for Mission Space. When passing through, you can see them right there. While this video may be concluding, the history of this attraction is far from over. The next chapter, ExtraTERRORestrial alien encounter, and Stitch's Great Escape after that are, in my opinion, the most interesting parts of its history. If you'd like to learn about the rest of the history of this attraction, stay tuned. I've got 2 more videos coming up soon following Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter and Stitch's Great Escape. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to Imagine Jackson and liking the video to show me you enjoyed it. I've got more content coming like this, as I am currently reimagining my channel into more of this format. I've already released one video about the Timekeeper, which you can watch with a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon.